On this episode of the Dairyland Initiative podcast, we're going to talk about cow comfort and the importance of optimizing rest for our dairy cows. Hi, I'm Courtney Hallbach.
And I'm Nigel Cook.
And this is the Dairyland Initiative podcast,
where we get to discuss issues related to the housing and management of dairy cattle.
Let's dive in. Well, Dr. Cook, are you ready to talk about cow comfort?
I am.
Okay, then let's get going.
We've set this up over several weeks, and I think it's finally time to try to answer the big question today is, what do we mean by cow comfort?
It's a catchy term.
A term that gets used even without translation in some countries. It sits on its own as cow comfort.
Cow comfort.
What do we mean by that?
Yeah.
Well, rest is really important to dairy cows. That's number one.
It's also important to humans like me.
I like a bit of rest too. Are you a 7 or 8 hour a night person?
I'm halfway in the middle there, 7.5.
7.5?
What about you?
I'm edging more towards a solid 8 as the time goes by. But enough of that. Lying down is really important for a dairy cow. Mm-hmm. And in studies done, a lot of these studies were done in the Scandinavian countries several years ago now, but they went about trying to deprive cows from an ability to lie down. And you would not believe how difficult that is.
Yeah, it kind of sounds
You have
bad.
to put them in slings, you have to build sort of wooden grids on the floor to stop the cows lying down, you have to have a person that sort of taps on them every 5 minutes to
Keep
make
them
sure.
awake.
Yeah, it's more involved than you would think. But when you deprive a cow of an ability to rest, one of the things that you'll see are behavioral changes. So key thing would be things like leg stomping, shifting from one foot to the other, standing without ruminating, things like that. So strong behavioral responses, signs of frustration.
But it's not just behavioral. There's some.
No, the other fascinating thing
physiological.
is there are physiological changes, yeah. So reduced circulating levels of growth hormone, increased stress hormones, and increased concentrations of cytokines, the inflammatory cytokines. And there's obviously great interest in the process of inflammation at the moment and its role in dairy cattle disease.
So what got you interested in this topic, Dr. Cook?
Because it's important to dairy cows.
I know, and you've been, your whole career has been on
yeah.
optimizing.
Let's take you back to the late 80s, early 90s. So I'm from the University of Bristol. I was trained as a veterinarian there, qualified in 92. But published around that time were a few studies done in local dairy herds. Mm-hmm. And what they managed to do was reduce the amount of lameness that they were seeing in dairy herds by putting more bedding in the stalls.
Okay.
Can you imagine?
Wow. Bedding?
At that time, we didn't know much about lameness. Most of what we knew was kind of transferred from the horse. Mm-hmm. It was kind of a feeding-related disease. So early 90s, to solve a lameness problem by adding more bedding kind of blew me away.
Wow. That's
seismic stuff.
I know. I was going to say, if that's what tripped your trigger.
I wrote a paper for an exam as a vet student on cubicle design. These are cubicles, by the way, in Europe. We call them freestalls here, but they're cubicles. Cubicles are kind of office spaces in the US.
Yeah. These cubicles look pretty awful.
They look pretty awful. Well, one study found that these Newton rig, that is the Newton rig loop, it's a nasty piece of work, they found that you had less lameness and cows lie down more if you converted them to the Dutch comfort. That horrible thing is called a Dutch comfort loop.
Whoa, your horrible thing.
Both are pretty bad, but that one was better.
Oh, wow.
So I'm going to take you to this picture because that was my first experience of enhancing cow comfort on a farm.
Oh.
So this is a farm in Sixpenny Handley.
No idea where that is.
Dorset. And I convinced them to remodel some of the stalls. Not all of them, some of the stalls. I said, could we get rid of these cross beams here that were, potentially injuring the cow? And what we put was a twisted rope. This is an idea from a guy called John Hughes that I'd heard talk in my early practicing days. So that's what we did.
And they listened to you.
And they did, and they added a pile of straw into the beds. And I turned up at that farm the next week, and normally when I got out of my car and set up my equipment for palpating cows, all the cows would be sort of milling around outside. There wasn't a single cow outside.
They were all lying down in the
Well, I thought the farm had sold out.
Oh.
I thought, what have I done? Oh, my God. And they said, come into the barn, Nigel, because I wasn't a doctor over there. Dr. Cook over there. And I walked into the barn, and every single cow was lying down in these wretched stalls, just because we'd removed 2 bits of metal.
Huh. I hope they gave you a scone with clotted cream on it.
There are a few, yeah. But that was my first experience, the power of cow comfort. So when we talk about cow comfort, these are the things that are top of my list.
Yep, and it does get back to the sustainability topic that we've been talking about in our previous episodes. Yeah,
we're going to focus on this optimization of rest, optimized resting behavior. Resting behavior is made up of lying time and how the cow gets those hours of lying in the number of bouts and the duration of each bout when she lies down. There are other important aspects of cow comfort. We'll talk more about climate extremes and the impact of heat stress. We'll talk about feeding and drinking, walking and exercise. And cows do sleep. When you see a cow with her head curled around, tucked into a flank, and you can kind of creep up at them and they don't know you're there.
Little eye rolls.
Yeah, they're in REM sleep at that point. So they do have REM sleep, but they can't support their heads when they're in that sort of phase. So they tend to have their head tucked around on their side.
And this all really plays into the well-being of animals.
Correct, yeah. Sleep would only be a matter of a few hours for a cow, 2 or 3 hours, but rest is, as you've seen, really important physiologically and behaviorally. So let's kind of examine what those lying bouts look like. So we've got an old video. This is one of my old favorites. This is an old mini DV camera. I'm going to show you how we got this footage eventually, but we're watching this old white cow here. You see her?
Yeah, I'm going to have to turn around and look.
So she lay down at about 20 past 4 in the morning. So usually between 2 and 5 is peak resting time for dairy cows. She's lying down there and she's having a lying bout. And cows generally lie down for about 1 hour. So keep your eyes open as 5:20 comes along and you're going to see that cow stand up, do what comes naturally, and then lie back down again. And she's going to flip over. She's now on her right-hand side. So cows flip from their left-hand side to the right-hand side, back and forth. They prefer to lie on their left-hand side, I think largely because the rumen's on the left, so they keep the rumen down. But they'll go through these bouts, and she's up again, and she'll continue and start another lying bout.
It's a really short standing period.
Some of them are, the lying bouts are generally about an hour. The standing bouts should be a matter of a few minutes.
Yeah, so easy to miss.
Yeah, and it's important to understand that standing in the stall for really protracted periods of time is somewhat abnormal. Yeah, so kind of bear that in mind. So how do we get this footage? So this is Tom Bennett up here, young Tom Bennett up on the ladder. This is me with rather more darker looking hair.
Yeah, is that you?
Yeah.
A squint.
So we bought these mini DV cameras. Do you know what a mini DV is, Courtney?
No, sorry. It's before my time.
Yeah, and we cut out these Rubbermaid containers and, what you can do with duct tape on a farm.
Oh, solves everything.
So we had 4 cameras basically shooting across the feed alley, and we filmed cows on real commercial dairy farms. Neil Anderson up in Canada was doing a little bit of this, doing some time-lapse stuff. We wanted to capture enough information to work out a time budget. And a time budget is all of the things that a cow does in her day, lying down, standing to eat, drinking, milking, and so on.
But really focused in a freestall facility.
Yeah, these were in freestalls. So we did initially we did a dozen farms. We eventually did 16 herds like this, and we color marked the cows. So we got our spray cans out and we marked up the cows so we could track individuals. Because before then, most people were just doing scan sampling and looking at groups of cows, how many in the group were lying down. We wanted to actually track individual cows. And this is your predecessor, Becky Brotzman. Shout out to Becky.
Hi, Becky.
We converted these mini DVs to a DVD. You remember a DVD?
I do know DVDs.
Thank goodness. Okay, so we had DVDs, and then we had a quadplexer that played all of these on the same screen. And this was before, the 70-incher that we've got behind us.
Yeah, I was going to say, poor Becky.
Poor Becky, yeah. She's on this old cathode ray oscilloscope or whatever that thing is. And we tracked cows. And it took forever. So, people's kind of, what are you, mad? It's, climbing up ladders, putting these
myself that every
up.
day.
The very first farm I did, I stayed overnight. So I was so paranoid about these cameras. And there was actually an electrical outage at 2:00 in the morning. So I got the ladder out and I reset all the cameras at 2:00 in the morning just to keep the study going.
Dedication.
Yeah, I'm sleeping in the back of my old Ford Explorer.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And then people complain at me why I don't like big helicopter fans. You might hear that in a future episode.
Yeah.
Not the biggest fan of helicopter fans. Well, that blade behind you there is a helicopter fan blade.
Oh, I thought this picture was you just showing off your muscles.
No, that's I could feel this breeze on the back of my neck when I was setting the camera up. And I turned around and one of those fans was flipping past me, at eye level. So, yeah, it's a dangerous business. Courtney,
but I like to see that you actually get down to hard work.
I try every now and again. This was a younger me.
Okay.
This is before I delegated. So you get basically 4 cameras and 4 shots trying to cover the entire pen. And then you sit there for hours, and most of these would take about 3 hours to do. And you would track the cow. You would draw a little picture of her. You can kind of see her here. And you can see her walking through the alleyway, and then she goes into a stall. And then she goes through bouts of standing and lying, and you record the time levels for those. And then she leaves the stall, and she might go and drink, or she might go and eat at the feed bunk. And then you can see she goes back to the stall here. And basically you follow her on this video for hours.
This is dedication.
Dedication. So each one of these cows would take about 3 hours to track. And then you'd have a bunch of these for each farm, and they're kind of fascinating. This is one of these things you kind of have to do if you're into animal behavior. You have to watch, and so those hours were pretty well spent. Some cows you can kind of see here. This is the East End gang. Yeah, cows kind of prefer to be on the east side of the pen. This cow here kind of likes being on the west side of the pen here. Some, spend more time in the feed alley. This cow rarely went into the rear alley. That was a dangerous place for her. So you really get into the minds of these cows.
Yeah.
And, you got to love this stuff. Just see. There was one particular cow that only ever laid in one stall. And she would wait for that stall to become vacant before she'd go and lie in it. And you can generally see cows don't lie in that many stalls. They develop their preference areas. So this kind of individual cow stuff is pretty fascinating.
But now we've become more high tech with our
we are a little bit more high tech now. But to this day, that data is still the only time budget data that's been accumulated on commercial dairies. So that nobody has been as nuts as I was then and redone that.
Did you hear that, folks? He's calling himself nuts.
A little bit crazy. The cameras have got better, thank goodness. Now we use these lovely little Brino cameras, little time-lapse cameras, and you can see them mounted up here, shooting high-def video of pens compared to the old footage.
And we can see Dr. Cook still gets up on ladders.
And I occasionally, one of these is me, I can't remember which one. And then obviously we have people like Laura Solano here, who's actually next door to us. She's moved in permanently. So with pictures of her cows and the video here, so you're tracking individuals, and you can still do this individual cow behavior stuff.
Yeah, but hopefully artificial intelligence comes along and is going to be able to do this for us instead of
I
people.
think that's where we're definitely going, and thank goodness. That would be amazing if we can get there. In the interim time, things have got a little bit easier because we have these little guys, these little data loggers. You can see the size of this if you're watching on video. Just tiny little thing about inch and a half by an inch. And you can strap these to a cow's leg, or even a sheep leg or a goat leg. It doesn't really matter. They're just accelerometers. You can do you if you like. Yeah.
No, thanks.
We can track and see how much you lie down. But this automatically gives you lying time. So you put this on the cow's leg, you leave it there for the week, and you can accumulate this information over time. And depending on the orientation of this device, and you can see in sort of 3 different planes, that will tell you whether the cow is lying down or standing up. And it can also tell you whether she's changing sides.
And how
using
often.
that Z-axis. You can kind of work out what's going on there. But all of these data loggers create huge files, and then you have to develop code to tell you whether the cow's lying down or not.
I'm going to leave that for the researchers to do.
It's hard, and I will tell you that the code isn't completely uniform, and there are other data logger types. There's 3 or 4 main different data loggers, and so you'll think cows are generally fairly slow moving beasts. You just they get things done, but they're not racehorses.
No.
But man, when they move between stalls or they change position, they can do that really quickly. And one of the challenges with these data loggers is try to capture that.
And then figure out which ones are
but filter out the noise.
Yeah.
Because it could be a cow just sort of shaking her leg or something. So not all of the code is equal. And you are only getting lying behavior out of this. This isn't telling you where the cow's standing, for example, or how long she's being milked. It is just lying behavior. So great little things, and that's why there's been a ton of more research done. And we know so much more about cow behavior as a result of this kind of technology.
Yeah, and so with this technology that we've been using, what kind of information have we gathered out of it, and
we
how are
now
we using
understand, lots of factors impact the ability of a cow to rest. So cow factors and external factors. So, for example, younger cows, heifers, will tend to get their rest in more shorter lying bouts. Older cows, fewer longer lying bouts.
Makes sense.
And heifers kind of eat that way as well, so they kind of rest and eat in these shorter, more frequent bursts.
Yeah, wonder if it's a dominant, subordinate type behavior.
Yeah, I think some of that has to be part of it. They're sort of nervous and looking around, and and there may well be some bullying going on with older cows, stopping.
Whereas those older cows, they can relax a little bit.
Yeah, they're a little bit more relaxed. Actually, by the end of the first lactation, heifers are behaving like older cows. Stage of lactation, generally you see lying time increase as you move from calving to late lactation. So it does increase with the stage of lactation. Generally, sick cows lie down longer than well cows. And that's interesting when we talk about trying to improve lying time. What we really mean is try to improve resting behavior, because longer lying times aren't always better. So if a sick cow lies down longer, that's not always a good sign.
No.
Yeah. interestingly, cows with mastitis, because the udder is painful when they lie down, they actually lie down less when they have mastitis than a well cow. And then we'll talk a little bit more about lameness and the impact that has on the ability of a cow to rest, and its interaction with some of these external factors, such as the stall surface.
Oh, we know you love your stall surface.
You know sand's coming into this at some point. Yeah. We'll talk about that. And in future episodes, we will talk about time out of the pen. Mm-hmm. Yeah, time spent milking and the impact that can have on the ability of a cow to rest, and the dreaded overstocking.
Oh, geez.
If we have more cows than lying spaces, that can certainly reduce the ability of a cow to rest.
And obviously the design of the freestall plays a role, just like it did back in the 90s. We'll talk about the dimensions and what that space looks like, and we'll talk about the resting microenvironment. Mm-hmm. We talked a little bit about ventilation of calf spaces. We're going to talk a whole lot about the ventilation of cow spaces too, and how that affects resting behavior.
Yeah.
But you said the lame cow, she's a special case, and she is.
The love of my life, Courtney.
There she is.
The focus of a lot of my attention in trying to reduce the number of these things. Mm-hmm. Yeah, cows with a sore foot. And what we kind of learned from those early behavior studies was that lame cows behave differently than non-lame cows.
And how so?
Complicated, because it's actually complicated by the type of surface that they're lying on as well. So these cows here are on a mattress stall. So this is typically a rubber crumb filled mattress pad, a soft pad, but not one that is has loose bedding that conforms to the sort of bony prominences of the cow, compared to cows on sand. And then in this graphic we're focused on lame cows here and the change in behavior that we see. On sand they were lying down more, on mattresses they were lying down less, but because we weren't just tracking lying time, we could see what they were doing. And actually the cows on mattresses were spending a long time standing up. They were standing in the stall for prolonged periods of time.
And why do you think that is?
Good question. It gets back to the transition of the cow from standing to lying and lying to standing. That's the difficulty she has.
And stall surface plays a role in that.
Plays a role. It's easier when you have a soft giving surface that gives you cushion and traction and support, compared to a firmer surface that creates a point impact, which with a painful sore foot can be extremely uncomfortable and difficult for the cow to get up and down. Mm-hmm. So the issue here is that cows get stuck. And I'll show you a graphic of that here, where we compare lame cows and non-lame cows.
And their resting time.
And their resting time. So this is a frequency distribution of lame cows. And you see here that it's kind of skewed. There's shorter and longer times when you compare it with a fairly normal-looking distribution of non-lame cows. Yeah, so that's peaking, averaging around 12, 13 hours of lying time per day. But out here, you've got more lame cows resting abnormally long times.
Because they can't get up.
Because they can't get up. It's difficult for them to get up. So they're lying there for 14, 15, 16 hours a day. Well, that's abnormal.
Yes.
They're not going to be able to milk for 3, eat for 4.5, and do all the other things cows want to get done.
But then on the other end of your...
We got cows out here that are resting much shorter times, and there are more lame cows in that population. Exactly. Those are the ones that are standing in the stall waiting to pluck up the courage to lie back down again, or trying to recover from getting up, which often takes an awful lot of effort. So you see this sort of bi-directional negative impact of lameness on resting behavior in our dairy cows.
And you've mentioned, you showed that picture of sand versus mattress, but obviously there's a lot more bedding surfaces out there, and that's going to be a whole another episode topic.
So we'll get into it.
Get in much more detail, but what do we know about lying times and different stall surfaces?
Yeah, this was actually a big study done by Laura Solano up in Canada. So 140 herds, 30 cows per farm. We're seeing on sand averages of around 11.7 hours a day, which is
close to our 12 hours.
Close to what we're talking about here. On different mats, mattresses, and just concrete with sort of soft bedding over the top. About 10.5 hours, so about an hour less. And the water beds here didn't do very well in this study, about 9.7 hours. So what we're sort of suggesting is these are not normal. Mm-hmm. Yeah, something bad is going on here. That's difficult to sort of understand when we just said lying longer isn't always better. Yeah. So sick cows can have abnormally long lying times. Mm-hmm. Lame cows can be lying longer. So really what we should be talking about is optimized rest and trying to find the number that suggests that a cow can lie down when she wants to for as long as she needs to.
Can you repeat that, Dr. Cook?
Optimized rest is allowing the cow to lie down when she wants to for as long as she needs to.
All right, that's it, folks. That's the episode.
That's what we're trying to get to. And 11.7 is closer to that optimal. Mm-hmm. It's not 14, 15, 16, but it isn't 8 or 9. Yeah, so those sub 10 hours a day are in an environment where the cow is standing on concrete rather than standing on dirt. Mm-hmm. You can get away with shorter resting times in pasture. We talked about that in a previous episode where grazing cows, when they're standing on dirt, mm-hmm. and their resting times are often 10 or 11 hours a day.
And they can get away with it.
Yeah, but in a freestall where they're standing on concrete, we need that lying time up around that 12 hours a day. Mm-hmm. And there's a positive impact to that.
Yeah.
When you compare mattresses, mat surfaces here in the red with sand, or deep bedded surfaces, and we'll use other types of deep bedding, things like manure solids and straw lime mixes and sawdust. We see a reduction in lameness with sand. We see a reduction in hock injuries and knee injuries with that deep, loose bedding.
And that's all very good for the welfare and well-being of our animals.
Deep, loose bedding is best for our dairy cows. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I had an experience, going to take you back to 2004 when we started doing this remodel business.
Yeah, when you were trying to get farms to listen to you, and they did?
They did, yeah. It was a scary thing, actually, when farmers actually listen to you and implement your recommendations. We have ended up doing a ton of mattress to sand conversions. Repouring curbs, putting bedding retainers on the back of curbs, lots of different ways of doing it, but converting barns with mattresses to barns with sand. And the very first one was this farm, amazing farm.
Yeah.
Working with their consultant, they made a commitment. They said, let's just try converting to sand.
The whole pen? The whole farm?
Just 15 stalls.
Okay.
On this farm, it was just 15 stalls, and they'd been reading the research and understanding what was going on, and they made this sort of seismic change. All they did was put a fiberglass pipe on the back of the stall and bedded with sand, and they did the last 15 stalls down in this pen here. Mm-hmm. And they watched for several weeks as the first 15 cows came back from milking and run down the feed lane and lie in those 15 stalls.
Well, if this was a preference study, you could easily say.
It was like a NASCAR race. They were, coming around that bend and just flying down there. Ignore that food. Let's get and lie down.
They know what they want.
Obviously, when you have preference like that, the farm goes, okay, we need to change, and they did. So they changed their At the time, 650 cow dairy, they changed those stalls over to sand, converted their manure handling system to a system that could manage sand. And over the course of several years, we saw their milk production increase and increase, which enabled them to expand. They weren't culling as many cows, so they could retain them. They built another barn. We saw their milk production increase by about 2,500 pounds of rolling herd average milk, or about 6 pounds of milk per cow per day over that time.
Easily paid off the investment then.
Yep. Lower cell count, lower turnover rates, better health, better healthy older cows. This is what these numbers are suggesting, that those older cows are being retained in the herd, producing more milk. Why? Because they're not lame anymore. And that was just a huge sea change in our industry, and that's enabled us to change what we're doing. And farmers, the farmers are the best salesmen.
Yes, they are.
Yep. So once another farmer sees a farm change like this, then it becomes an easier pitch. But frankly, a little scary when you do it for the first time.
I was going to say, I can only imagine you were having some sleepless nights there.
Yeah, where we stand in our Wisconsin dairy industry at the moment is that about 60% of our herds are using sand bedding. They generally make up to 2,000 pounds more milk than the manure solid or mattress herds using organic bedding over the top, and their somatic cell counts are less. Back to time budgets. Let's finish this off with a summary of where we're at.
Yeah.
So I've showed this information before, trying to make the case that compared to a grazing cow, our cow in this housed environment needs to rest more, or at least have the opportunity to do so. So to make it possible for that cow to rest for half the day, let's say 12 hours a day, there are certain limits to what we can do, and one of them would be milking time. We can't milk the cows longer than about 3.5 hours a day to maintain the time available for rest, because a lot of our other activities are fixed.
Yep. Eating, drinking,
they're non-negotiable. 4.5 hours eating, 2.5 hours socializing and drinking in the alleys, 2 hours standing in the stall. So they still do that some. Just we don't want to see that up at 4 or 6 hours a day. So that was our time budget that we got from those initial videos. Yeah,
tracking individual
cows
by hand
in the evenings. Instead of watching whatever was on the TV at the time.
Yeah, not Netflix.
I didn't have Netflix back then. Remember Blockbusters? No,
actually, I do remember.
Okay, that's good. Yeah. I'm not feeling that old then. But this was the time budget that we put forward, and a lot of the studies since have shown that we're not achieving this. That in studies around the world in housed environments, we see too many average line times around 10.5 hours a day, and I'll maintain that just isn't enough.
Nope, and there's a lot of reasons for that.
Yeah.
I think we're going
to get into them.
We'll get into them.
So theoretically, thinking about this, achievable rest and what that number should be, with healthy cows, well-designed stalls, fed a total mixed ration where you're not milking them too long, you're not overstocking them too much, and you're providing a favorable resting microenvironment, so fans over the stalls and so on, we should be able to achieve averages of groups of cows within the range of 11.5 to 12.5 hours a day. So that's our goal. And the reason I can say that is you and I...
We're doing it.
A few summers ago, we went and measured this. Yeah?
Couple summers ago.
Couple of summers ago?
Maybe it is a few summers ago.
Yeah, I think it was 2021.
Yeah, okay.
The time it flies. We went to 12 3X milking, high-producing dairy herds, bedded with deep bedding, predominantly sand, and we did these line time audits.
And both in a naturally ventilated facility as well as cross-ventilated facilities.
These 6 herds were on natural ventilation. These 6 herds were cross-ventilated, so mechanical systems. And we used these little hobo devices to measure line time, so we could track that. And our average line time was, you couldn't make this up, 12.1 hours a day.
Amazing.
Yeah. And the vast majority of the herds are within this range of 11.5 to 12.5. One of them just missed it, but several exceeded it. But at the moment, we can see well-managed, well-designed, freestall-housed dairy herds producing a lot of milk. Vast majority of these herds are making more than 90 pounds of milk per cow per day, achieve these phenomenal resting times.
Well, I'm safe to say that a lot of work has gone into studying the time budget of cows, and that information we're still using today and looking at what the new builds are doing to maximize or optimize rest.
Yep.
And we'll dig into how we can further optimize rest in more detail, from stall design, I'm sure you're going to talk about sand in much greater detail.
Maybe a little bit more.
And the microenvironment of the cow.
We're going to get into it. Thanks for joining us.
The Dairyland Initiative is supported by industry leaders who are advancing cow comfort worldwide. We would like to say a special thank you to our premier sponsor, Saputo, who is providing the global community with high-quality dairy products made from high-quality milk from healthy and well-cared-for animals. We'd also like to say thank you to our other sponsors, SaveCows.com, Zinpro, GPS Dairy Consulting, 40 Barn, SureGain Trow Nutrition, Munters, J&D Manufacturing, VES Artex, Ventec, and Kestrel Instruments. Thanks for tuning in to the Dairyland Initiative podcast. Want more Dairyland Initiative? Be sure to subscribe to our podcast, follow us on our socials, and visit our website for all of the latest recommendations in dairy cattle housing and management. See you next time.